and welcome back to Thomson Reuters Talks Financial Crime. I am your host, Gina Gerva, attorney and manager of market insights, market intelligence, and thought leadership for the Thomson Reuters Institute and our corporate and government business. So today we are continuing with synthetic identity fraud. This is a pervasive type of fraud where criminal actors essentially take parts of people's personal identifying information, social security numbers, names, dates of birth. They change them around and create a synthetic or fake person. Some people have called this also Frankenstein fraud. Or in earlier episodes, we talked to Professor Chelsea Binns about what this fraud is. We talked to Jim Dinkins, president of Thomson Reuters Special Services, who also helped us understand the law enforcement side of this equation. And now today I have with me Amanda DuPont, who is our public records product specialist. Amanda is an attorney and experienced investigative researcher and speaker. She has 22 years of professional experience in the legal industry. And in her current role, she works very closely with our corporate clients as well as our commercial customers to talk about public records and Thomson Reuters new product developments to help these customers develop innovative solutions in the public records arena. Amanda, and you and I have also appeared on several webinars together, so some of you may be familiar with our dynamic duo here, but thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here, Gina.
So let's go into it. I mean, fraudsters are using synthetic identity fraud during this COVID-19 pandemic. Jim Dinkins talked a little bit about it. What are you seeing from the public record side?
Yeah, I can definitely share. There's been some synthetic identity very much apparent during our COVID crisis. Two ways we're seeing it here at Thomson Reuters. We're seeing it in the PPP loan applications. There is audits happening on these loans. You're starting to hear them in the news, right? We certainly have seen fake persons, fake businesses emerge in those, even as financial institutions file suspicious activity reports. I mean, we certainly are seeing the fruits of investigations show fake subjects. And at the same token, you're also seeing in the news fake persons submitting synthetic identities to get on unemployment claims across the country. And I'm not saying it's everyone, certainly it's not. And we certainly know we're in a crisis where we have to do something. And this just is a perfect storm of where low-hanging fruit exists for our bad actors to go do what they do best, commit fraud.
Absolutely. And you know what you said a moment ago about it's not just fake persons, but fake businesses. So what are you seeing in terms of fake businesses, and like what are some just markers or red flags that would indicate that a business is actually fake, and in the context of applying for the PPP loan, for instance?
The biggest red flag I always remind everybody is you really do need to use technology. We've kind of shared this in 2021, which we're coming into right now. You really want to make sure the company exists in some type of records. So the biggest red flag I see every day is just no records are found. They're not in a corporate filing database across the country. There's no records that show this company exists. These are really easy to spot. Now, in the PPP loan fraud, what we saw a lot were businesses that really are dormant, no longer active. They're essentially a dissolved business that suddenly, has lots of economic loss during COVID. Or we saw, you can see it in the news stories, purchased businesses off the internet that were created in May 2020. They're submitting their loans. So really understanding kind of the actual life of that business, which is very visible in records. That's one easy way to solve this. So another thing I'd share is I see it every day where I remind everybody simply having a website, right? Just having a website, just having an email. These do not prove you're real.
Sure.
We spend a lot of time talking to how we see that every day, that's the reason someone's opening an account with someone, but that doesn't mean that company or person ever existed.
Absolutely. Just having an email address isn't enough to say you're a real person. Just creating a social media profile doesn't actually make you a real person either. So
exactly.
I think that's very interesting. And, for financial institutions and banks specifically, this kind of creates this dual risk, right? Because not only are the criminals defrauding the banks themselves with these fake identities, but they're leaving behind these uncollectible debts as well. If they're, opening credit cards or other type of accounts, starting to pay on them and then not paying on them. And so it drives up charge-offs. So what technology is available to stop synthetic identity fraud that you're aware of?
That's a great question. And today, I do think there's a lot of ways to help solve it. We certainly are helping solve it if you partner with us, but I see it as a twofold equation. You want to verify your subject exists in records, right? Do they sit in databases with the data they provided to you? And you want more is more, right? The more information you can gather on the subject and say, yes, this really does validate to this subject. And then you also want to essentially authenticate them. Did they present the data? With the whole world moving digitally, it's a lot easier for fraudsters to create these opportunities because there's no face-to-face event. But even in face-to-face events, I can tell you it's not real data too. But if you kind of can confirm the subject presented the data and validate the data, you've really solved getting fakes in the door.
Well, one last thing, and it sounds like this is really something that everyone should be aware of, financial institutions, but also you and I talked about a very interesting story, that a business that you've spoken to recently as it relates to romance scams. So why don't you leave us with that and show
Yeah.
us the scope of this problem, really.
I really like everyone to kind of have a buyer beware mindset. With everything we kind of do today in 2021 with technology all around us, we have to be highly skeptical that we've been presented the truth. We see it in social media sites, we see it with, things labeled fake. But the point is, we all have to do due diligence. And it's really apparent when I heard from a large dating website that they wanted to start thinking about validating identities on that site. And if you think about it, it doesn't take much to create an email account to go on a dating site. And that was a situation where I was challenging, if you're only collecting an email and you're collecting a made up date of birth, you're not really going to validate that person's real. So it just comes back to the concept of garbage in, garbage out's overused, but it really is, are you getting good enough data to really do a validation? And even if that's not the case, just go in knowing that, right? Go in knowing that that's really not a validatable, that you can't really validate what just got put into that site to create a subject.
Especially in the dating websites, like if you create a profile, you can just create a profile and become whoever you would like to be, which in some sense that's fine, no judgment there, but at the same time, if they're also trying to scam people, that is a problem too. So this clearly, this problem is, like I said, pretty pervasive, and sounds like technology is really one of the ways to solve it and really validate these identities as best you can using technology solutions. So well, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. And it's a scary type of fraud, but sounds like you are definitely on the case and working on it. And, hopefully you catch fraudsters doing this.
Thanks so much, Gina.
Thank you.